honest yet shrewd manager. I must confess, I am quite troubled by today's gospel parable. I think it's the hardest parable that Jesus ever told. We have a master who calls on the carpet, a manager who has been cheating on his master. The master fires him and demands an audit of the books. The dishonest manager, now in crisis mode, doesn't fold up his arms in paralyzed despair and helplessness. Rather, he spends every ounce of his energy on planning his future. The guy is a crook. He's unethical and thinks only of himself. Most of us would find it hard to like such a scoundrel. If justice were served, he should be convicted of fraud and go to jail. However, that's not what happens. I don't know about you, but I find that Jesus shocks us into a reality when at the end of the parable, the dishonest manager is commended by his master for his shrewd business practices. The unethical scoundrel is praised for his worldly wisdom, his business smarts. In the words of the Good News of the Bible, or the Good News Bible, the master of this dishonest manager praised him for doing such a shrewd thing because the people of this world are much more shrewd in handling their affairs than the people who belong to the light. So I hear that as, I guess there are things that the people of God can learn from crooks. So even though we may be shocked, offended, and even angry at this dishonest manager, let's set that shock, offense, and anger aside and see if we can learn what Jesus is trying to teach us here. For starters, the dishonest manager knows what he wants: money, comfort, security. He is single-minded in his focus on these things. His goal is clear, and he is willing to spend all of his energies to reach it. You may be familiar with the old adage, those who fail to plan, plan to fail. Not this guy. He goes all out to make his plan and carefully, calculatedly executes it. So what about us, followers of Jesus? Do we have the single-mindedness of this guy? Or does the church get too sidetracked with non-essentials, wasting time, energy, and resources on matters less important, instead of focusing on essentials like maybe, for example, spreading the gospel in word and deed to the ends of the earth? Another thing we can learn from this dishonest manager is the capacity to be creative and resourceful. The manager was certainly unethical and selfish, yet he had a considerable creativity and resourcefulness. He hatches quite a scheme. Notice how he displays a lot of worldly wisdom in his approach to the two debtors. He does not say to them in a blunt, confronting way, pay up or suffer the consequences. Even though he likely knew how much debt they owed the master, he does not tell them what they owe. Rather, he asks them what they owe. Worldly wisdom teaches that people are more likely to respond in a positive way if they are asked such things rather than told them. In asking the debtors how much they owe the master, the manager is giving them the benefit of the doubt that they are telling the truth and treating them with civility, not scorning them. He is providing a win-win method of communication with debtors. But what about us as Christians? How can we learn to be more creative and resourceful? I think we can learn this from folks like, for example, the Apostle Paul today. You remember that on one occasion he said this of himself in his ministry, I have become all things to all people, that I by all means might save some. Paul is quite creative and resourceful at times, dancing to the beat of a different drummer than other Christian leaders. He was criticized for it and terribly misunderstood. Yet Christ blessed Paul's bold creativity and resourcefulness on several occasions as he traveled far and wide, preaching the gospel and establishing establishing many congregations. Another thing we can learn from this dishonest manager and those worldly wise people is the importance of planning for the future and having a vision for the future. The dishonest manager was very proactive in planning and visioning his future. He might have been content to stay in the present, or felt unable to see any future because of being fired by his master. He might have said, well, my future is lost. Everything is lost. However, this was not the case. He looks ahead, not behind. Right away, he says to himself that he does not want a future where he is digging ditches or begging on the street. No, that is not going to happen to him. The dishonest manager doesn't waste a moment. He acts immediately, hatching this plan to build bridges with the master's debtors by asking them to pay. In the case of the one, only half of the amount owed, and in the case of the other, 80% of the amount owed. So let's be clear. I'm not standing up here saying to you, let's be dishonest in planning the future. I don't think that the church should ever practice dishonesty or unethical means to reach future ends. However, what I am saying, and I believe what Jesus is saying to us here, is that this church has a potential to be blessed in many ways by faithful Christians being proactive in planning and visioning for the future. That is actually what we're doing this right now as we go forward in our building discernment. We are planning and visioning for the future. Where do we want to see St. Paul's lead? If a dishonest manager works so diligently in planning his future, how much more diligently do the followers of Jesus work to plan for the future of the church? If Christianity's true vision, if what we have been given by God through Christ, with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, is life's most valuable treasure of eternal worth, then how do we plan and vision for the future to ensure that there is a future of the church? Of course, the ultimate future is in God's hands. By His grace, we can plan and vision for that future with enthusiasm and hope, since we trust that we shall be part of the future when His kingdom shall come to its own fullness.